Three watches, evidence number 15, that the marvelous works in the third watch. Quote, he had reference to those whom God should call in the last days, who should hold the power of the priesthood and to bring again Zion. End of quote. Shortly after the church was organized, they were commanded to gather to the Ohio, where they would receive the higher law of the gospel, which is referred to in future revelations as consecration, celestial law, law of Zion, gospel law, etc. A large portion of the revelations received by the prophet Joseph Smith talked about the importance and urgency of the gathering and the law of consecration. 6 years after the reestablishment of the church, the saints had failed in several attempts to live consecration and redeem Zion. The Lord had revealed that September 11, 1836, was the appointed time to redeem Zion in Jackson County if the saints were faithful. Shortly after the dedication of the Kirtland Temple, apostasy broke out among the saints in Kirtland, Ohio, which caused many of the members and their leaders to leave the church. Shortly after that time, most of the loyal members of the church began to scatter and flee from Kirtland, just as the saints in Jackson County had previously been scattered after they failed to live consecration. When the church was first reestablished in 1830, it was called the Church of Christ, CD&C 20. In April of 1838, after many of the saints began gathering to Far West, Section 115 was given, which revealed that the name of the church had now been changed. Some of the saints left the church because of the name change. They could not accept that God would rename the church 6 years after reestablishing it. At that time, the Lord informed the saints that those who were faithful members living in Zion, Far West, which was another place which had been designated as being part of the land of Zion and was a place of gathering to live the law of consecration, would now be called the church in Zion. Furthermore, the Lord designated that all of the elders and members of the church that were not gathered to a designated place of gathering, where the law of consecration and the principles of Zion would be lived, would now be called, quote, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, end of quote. In other words, the name, quote, Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, end of quote, has specific reference to members of the church in the last days that are not living the law of consecration and are therefore in a scattered condition, quote. And also unto my faithful servants, who are of the high council of my church in Zion, for thus it shall be called, and unto all the elders and people of my church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, scattered abroad in all the world, thus shall my church be called in the last days, even the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, end of quote. Unfortunately, even those who were gathered at Far West, attempting to live the law of consecration, eventually had to flee from there, just like they had to flee from Jackson and Kirtland. After the saints gathered to Nauvoo, the High Council approached the prophet Joseph Smith and told him they were already ready to attempt living the law of consecration again, but he informed them that the time was not right. That's in History of the Church, Volume 4, page 93. The prophet Joseph Smith possibly responded the way he did because the Lord had previously told the saints that because of their transgressions, they must wait a little season for the redemption of the land of Zion in Jackson County. Quote, therefore, in consequence of the transgressions of my people, it's expedient in me that mine elders should wait for a little season for the redemption of Zion, that they themselves may be prepared, and that my people may be taught more perfectly, and have experience, and know more perfectly concerning their duty, and the things which I require at their hands. And this cannot be brought to pass until mine elders are endowed with power from on high. For behold, I have prepared a great endowment and blessing to be poured out upon them, inasmuch as they are faithful and continue in humility before me. Therefore, it is expedient in me that mine elders should wait for a little season for the redemption of Zion. End of quote. Now that the window of opportunity to live consecration in the second watch had passed, the efforts of the saints turned toward ushering in the third watch, containing the dispensation of the fullness of times by completing the Nauvoo Temple. The prophet Joseph Smith informed the saints that the salvation of the church was now predicated on completing the Nauvoo Temple. Quote, the first great object before us, and the saints generally, is to complete the temple. This is highlighted, to secure the salvation of the church. End of highlighting. Elder Rigdon, when addressing his brethren upon the importance of building this house, spake to this effect, that we should use every effort to accomplish this building by the time appointed, and if we did, the Lord would accept it at our hands. Here's it's highlighted. And on it depends the salvation of the church, end of highlighting, and also of the world, end of quote. That's in History of the Church, Volume 4. When the saints failed to complete the temple in Nauvoo and to provide an acceptable offering containing the records of their dead in said temple, and that's reference D&C 128, verse 24, and the prophet Joseph and Hiram were murdered and the saints had to flee from Nauvoo to Utah, this left them as an unconsecrated people. This left them in a scattered condition in a Gentile nation. From that time on, the church in these last days has been called the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, according to the prophecy and commandment given in section 115, because it had been in a scattered condition ever since the saints fled Nauvoo to go to Utah. Members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints represent the scattered remnant of God's people among the Gentiles. So why is it important to understand that the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints is a remnant of God's people who are in a scattered condition among the Gentiles? Because in a question and answer period, Elias Higbee asked the prophet to expound upon what Isaiah 52 verses 1 and 2 was talking about. The prophet's reply shed light on the future of the Latter-day Saints as those who have been called in the last days, who have been given the power of the priesthood to bring again Zion. The promise is that a remnant of the Latter-day Saints shall return from a scattered state to a gathered state, and to put on the authority of the priesthood which they had lost. And here it is. This is section 113. Questions by Elias Higbee. What's meant by the command in Isaiah 52nd chapter, 1st verse, which saith, "Put on thy strength, O Zion," and what people had Isaiah reference to? Return, he had reference to those whom God should call in the last days, who should hold the power of the priesthood to bring against Zion, and the redemption of Israel. And to put on her strength is to put on the authority of the priesthood, which she, Zion, has a right to by lineage, also to return to that power which she had lost. What are we to understand by Zion loosing herself from the bands of her neck? 2nd verse. We're to understand that the scattered remnants are exhorted to return to the Lord from whence they have fallen, which if they do, the promise of the Lord is that he will speak to them or give them revelation. See the 6th, 7th, and 8th verses. The bands of her neck are the curses of God upon her, or the remnants of Israel in their scattered condition among the Gentiles. This is all in bright red. End of quote. The promise in Isaiah 52 that a remnant of the Latter-day Saints will return from a scattered condition to a gathered condition and to put on the authority of the priesthood again and return to the Lord is one of the most powerful testimonies that the marvelous work is a future event that takes place after the restoration of the church in 1830. We've got a couple of comments. Anonymous said, "Watcher, are we supposed to wait until Zion is once again taken and join our brethren in defending it against the wicked who seek to reclaim it? Is that how we are to know when to gather at Zion? I am one of those numbered among the strength of the church, so I'm wondering." Watcher said, great question. As you prayerfully continue your searching of the scriptures, and the answer will begin to emerge in greater clarity as the Holy Spirit reveals the answer to you. Smiley face.